Clara, be my pal. Tell me, am I a good man?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
Welcome back to WD Magicast for the week of March 19th, 2023. This is episode 219. Happy spring, everyone! Spring has sprung. WD Magicast, the show about the mouse, the Marvels, the galaxy, and beyond. I'm your host, Matthew Gracon. In this week's show, we have the honor of being joined by Mr. Ken Deep, noted Doctor Who expert. I will definitely go to say the word expert. After hearing this discussion, you will agree with us. And philosopher. He is very knowledgeable. He used to be on a show called Doctor Who Podshock, which we will briefly talk about, and also runs the L.I. Who convention. And has been in a book or a movie or two. Listen and find out, and be ready for some breaking news that he will bring regarding some projects coming up. And on that note and tease, we'll be back after these words from our friends and sponsors. And now, on with the show. Fandom takes many forms, and some people like to take their fandom to a whole nother level. Some of us do podcasts. Some of us go to conventions. And then other of us have done podcasts and run our own conventions. And someone who does that, and primarily does that for Doctor Who, and I've told you folks, I am slowly introducing everybody to Doctor Who, is Mr. Ken Deep. Ken, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thanks, Matthew. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. As I was just telling you, my first podcast I listened to was Doctor Who Podshock with you and Lewis and
James.
James. I keep skipping out on his name, Mr. James Norton.
Yeah. Many years ago now, right?
Yeah, it was right around Sandy whenever you guys stopped. I think it was because I know Lewis lost a lot of his equipment in that storm.
Yeah.
Recorded a few things on his phone. I'm sorry?
He was hit pretty bad by that storm. I grew up in that town in Oceanside, New York, and that was they were hit pretty bad by it, but mostly because of the area is so close to the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of put a crimp in Doctor Who Podshock after James and I had bowed out. And we had a nice run together, and hopefully we'll get back together maybe for a reunion at some time. I don't know, 20th anniversary or something.
I still have you guys as, in my feed. So whenever if anything showed up, it would pop up on my my list.
Cool.
So, but now you've gone to the next level and you run L.I. Who, which is a fan convention in Long Island, New York, of Doctor Who and many. I think you don't just limit yourself to Doctor Who. You do many other British shows as well, because I've seen you got some like 7 people showing up at sometimes, and
yeah, And this year Space 1999 on top of that. I mean, they have to have some connection to Doctor Who because it's pretty much a Doctor Who convention. But it's nice when you can find other actors who have done some other things that excite Anglophiles. So Catherine Schell, who was in City of Death, is joining us, but she was also in James Bond and she was in Space 1999. So those fans get excited, and maybe there are some people who are casual Doctor Who fans that might dip their toe into coming to our convention this year to meet them. And of course, it doesn't take a lot of arm twisting to do a little bit of Space 1999 programming or Blake 7 programming, or even James Bond. We've done James Bond programming almost from the very beginning, because I'm pretty convinced James Bond is a Time Lord.
Absolutely, he keeps on changing and going along with the times, and he always looks a little different, and no one seems to notice.
Yeah, no one seems to care either.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning, and the ultimate question is, how did you get into Doctor Who?
I was got to be about 40 years ago now. I was maybe pre-teen, and in the days before having cable television, you had only what the selector would dial into, and I couldn't stand what was on VHF, so I clicked over to UHF, which normally is only known for Spanish programming and wrestling, apparently, and or nature documentaries.
Yes.
And on PBS on UHF, the listing said Doctor Who science fiction, and I conflated that with Doctor No, and I said, there's no way there's science fiction on the channel that shows nature documentaries and cooking shows.
And Bob Ross.
I had to go be nosy, and in those days, again, sort of before VHS became a sort of household item, you couldn't watch your favorite things on demand. You had to wait for someone to broadcast it. And so Star Wars was in the theater and not on any home releases, and Star Trek was on at midnight on my local channel. So you couldn't just tune in whenever you wanted to find things that you wanted to watch. And so I was just exploring and looking for new science fiction, and Doctor Who was there. I had seen a few pictures in Starlog of some Doctor Who things, and I think John Pertwee in the Who-mobile was in one of the pictures, and a picture of the science
yes.
something. So I had a sort of rough impression from seeing those things. So for me, mixing up Doctor Who and Doctor No was very easy, because he had these gizmos and fancy cars, and I'm like, oh, he must be like some kind of spy or something. And I was completely wrong, and very happily so, and just kind of jumped right into it. And really, I went to school the next day, and I asked my friends, you ever hear of this show, Doctor Who? And none of them knew what I was talking about. So on top of me finding this other thing that had a lot of content available, it was also my own secret show, because no one else around me seemed to know about this thing. And then as I'm known to do, I jump into my fandoms, sort of whole, full bore. And I joined a Doctor Who fan club, a local Doctor Who fan club, and that's where I met Louis Trapani, my co-host on Podshock, and many of my longtime friends. And so that was the beginning of my involvement in fandom. And that was probably also the time I started going to conventions. And the first thoughts in my head was, I don't understand why I can't do this. Not realizing how much time, effort, and money is involved in doing such things.
Oh, yes. My story's not too far off. I'm sure you were watching. I'm in New Jersey, so in Monmouth County. So I had NJN at night, which would play it. But what was great is, if I remembered, on WLIW 21 would have it in the afternoons, and I'd have a different story. So sometimes could get double Doctor Who on. It was always Saturday.
That's right. That's right. And there was a station in Connecticut for those who were ambitious and really got their UHF antenna pretty high. They showed it at a different time as well. So you really had a chance to catch, like you said, they were all on different runs. So you would just drop in and out and do, find different ways of seeing different stories and really fulfilling that. As I was mentioning, it was on in a lot of different places. So you could get some satisfaction watching more than just one channel once a week kind of thing. And, WNJN and their showing the omnibus movie form episodes on Saturday night, that was very formative to me. Doctor Who fans in Britain talk a lot about it being sort of Saturday night television for them growing up. And I think we had a touch of that experience because of WNJN. If you lived in the New York area, the New York, New Jersey area, you had that Saturday night must see, and you saw the whole story. So it became an appointment thing. You sat down and there it aired, and you've got the story from start to finish. The only thing that we lacked at that time was that sort of cliffhanger thing. That we now know is really so important to the enjoyment of Doctor Who. But at the time, it didn't matter. They were showing Doctor Who. And I remember thinking a couple of times when they showed things like a 7-parter, it would go on for almost 3 hours. Like, holy cow, this is going to be a commitment tonight,
Yeah, War Games would be in the rotation. It's like, okay, you'd sit down, I think it was 8, 9 o'clock, and you'd go to almost 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, if they ran it straight through, boy, you were making a commitment that night.
And what was nice, and you mentioned, the day and the age, you didn't have on demand, you didn't have the internet really at all. You couldn't even go to your local video store and buy the VHS. My brother had the foresight of recording a lot of these at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I still have the majority of the collection that he has. So I could just pop the VHS in, which I still have one working VHS player to be able to enjoy some of those formatted shows. But I still feel
the bane of our existence was pledge breaks. And
yes,
having them on tape, it's like gold, because I see people who I've known for years in their earliest regenerations, so to speak. And a few who are gone, which is, for me, is there's a great deal of nostalgia for that when I see friends who have passed on and see them there in our happiest days. Sorry,
living no,
that, but I feel really strongly about that stuff.
And well, you should. It's a little living memory.
Yeah.
So that's part of this, that's how, in some ways, I could tell people to relate. With Disney, it's a similar type of thing. It's a different subject, but the fandoms are relatively the same in that aspect. Where there's the unity over this one thing, and it's global. It expands beyond just this type of person. A lot of people can be into it. And I particularly noticed, because like you, when I grew up, I'd mention to my friends or anybody about Doctor Who, and they go, "Nope, never heard of it. It just wacky." "Oh, you mean Star Trek?" No, not Star Trek. It's Doctor Who. Is it like Star Trek?
No,
not exactly. No.
Monty Python meets Back to the Future is as close as I can get to explaining it to an American friend.
And Bill and Ted. But it's then when it came back in 2005, it was still, well, what's that show? But then as that progressed, especially when we got to David Tennant and Matt Smith, and start to see at the conventions people showing up in cosplay dressed up as characters, and merchandise in stores. I could go to Toys R Us and buy Doctor Who figures and a sonic screwdriver. something I was never able to do my entire life, and it was just a weird transition for me to see it become more mainstream in that aspect. But it also made me happy that wow, finally after at that point 40 years that it's becoming more broad scoped and more people are getting into it.
Yeah, it was actually I thought it was great. Despite my initial feelings, going back to as a kid that it was like my own secret show, and now all of a sudden I had to share it with everybody. But it was a good feeling because for people who knew me for so long, they would be like, "Hey, that's the show you're always evangelizing," and I'm like, "Yeah, I've been telling you about that." Oh yeah, they have those like scary angels, or they have that really good-looking guy, David Tennant, or something like. They would always tell
Yeah.
about their experience. I'm like, "Yeah, that's him." And now the big thing is, "Oh, that guy on House of Dragons, he was in Doctor Who." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't say."
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, "Yeah, we were on Matt Smith before it was cool."
Yep.
And
Uh,
believe me, before it was cool.
yeah, well before. And also The Crown. Um,
That's right.
the oh, I just forgot. I was going to say, yeah, I've had those conversations with friends in high school because whenever I was in high school when the Fox movie came out,
Hmm.
and I was trying to tell, oh, you should watch this, you should watch this, you should watch this. Unfortunately, it was a one and done, and very few of them took my advice, but they've now gone and watched the 2005 on stuff, and they talk about Doctor Who, and I go, oh yeah, that show that I told you about back in high school. Oh yeah, yeah, no, we didn't realize it was so cool. I'm like, well, yeah, I tried to
Yeah,
explain that to you a while ago.
I think in the States it became extremely accessible. It was on Netflix for a while, and the streaming services, um, it's pretty much been on at least one streaming service at all times. So if you really
Yeah,
wanted to find it, you could find it. BBC America occasionally shows it. That's a channel called BBC America. Occasionally they show British shows on there. And
occasionally.
so it became pretty accessible, and that was good, and it's a quality show. The Rebirth is a quality product, and I had a similar situation with a few of my friends who didn't know what I was talking about in middle school, who now work with me at my convention, and do so really just out of friendship for me. Like I have a couple of my lifelong friends who aren't particularly Doctor Who fans, but just go, well, if I can help you in any way, I want to be involved because this is like a massive undertaking. And they do, and they've actually come to like. What's funny? I know a couple of people who've said to me, I'm not really a Doctor Who fan, but the people involved, whether it's the fans or the people they meet like at a convention, there's just such nice people. I just enjoy being around them. And I have a few people who just come because everyone's so laid back and then there for the right reasons, and they just want to have a good time. It's not it's not an unhealthy scene. It's such a positive place to be, and I think we crave that. We crave that as a sense of community, and that's to your point about fandom as well with Disney and with Doctor Who, and you could go the same with Star Trek or Star Wars, or you can list fandoms that aren't even genre related. You could talk about the Beatles has a fandom,
Yeah.
or model train collecting or things like that. There's a fandom there, and we like having that sense of community. People who enjoy the same things that we enjoy. They have similar aspects to them. That there's sort of a self-policing of it sometimes. They have the same pitfalls, and that's something I've been talking about a lot lately. That we can't, as a fandom, we can't alienate younger fans who are coming to our fandom. That's only going to kill the fandom when you
Hmm.
say, oh, you don't know what you're only a fan of blah blah blah. No, it doesn't work like that. Listen, you can like classic Who, but the kids are like the new Who, or the younger people are like they have every right to like what they like, and it's not on you to police it, and we have to be inclusive, or it's just going to die. And that goes for everything and every kind of fandom.
Yeah, Star Trek went through that when Next Generation came out. Oh, well, you only like the new stuff, not the old stuff. I'm like, no, I liked all of it. Star Wars is going through that, where no, I only like the original three, and the prequels on and off are garbage, or I like the prequels, but the new stuff is garbage. And I've explained even to my own co-host that the people who grew up with the prequels, that were young when they saw that was their Star Wars, and that's why we're getting so much stuff based off the prequels now, because they're older now.
Right, that's their thing.
And now the sequel ones, whatever you think of them, like my son who is 8, that was one of his first movies. His first movie was The Force Awakens, and he's seen those in the theaters, and that's what he's grown up with. And then when he gets into his 20s and 30s, that's going to be the shift again, because it will be, that's the Star Wars that he grew up with.
You see the same thing when you hear people of different ages talk about music. Oh, the only good music was in the 70s. Really? Really? That's where it all happened.
Everything happened in the 70s, and nothing before, nothing after.
Everything happened when you were in high school, is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I feel. I grew up in the 80s. To me, my favorite music is the 80s, but doesn't mean that something that comes out today isn't good.
No.
Just not what you've beaten up for 40 years on your vinyl, then CD, then MP3, and now however they're beaming it into your skull.
There'll be a little microchip implanted.
Yeah.
Oh, I would say I could play on my sonic screwdriver, but my boys have hit it on me.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, but let's. I have some questions here. So, speaking of fandoms, for people, and like I said, I'm doing this to help introduce people that may have not heard of it or have only slightly heard of it, who aren't familiar, especially since it's coming to Disney Plus. This is a great time to kind of start your homework, as it were, to prepare for it. Was a momentous occasion for any show, the 60th anniversary episode, which will come out in November.
Episodes, plural, perhaps.
Yeah, this is true. We don't know. We don't know exactly what they have planned, but the celebration of the 60th will be happening this year, and it's a good time to you have some time, do some homework, get and start figuring things out. So, how would you suggest someone who is new to Doctor Who start watching?
So the first thing I would say is, if you are purely a Disney person and you're coming to this because everything on Disney Plus is something you watch because you're paying a lot of money for that every month.
Yep.
You don't have to do your homework. You can simply watch it when it comes on. I can promise you that Disney and Bad Wolf, which is the production company that's currently running Doctor Who, that they will make it accessible. That this will not be something that is like a snake trying to bite an elephant. It's not going to be like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to be able to handle this. Russell T Davies, who is the showrunner, again, he's returned for this Disney launch. He was very good in 2005 when he brought the show back to make it accessible, knowing that if you try to get people to absorb all that history in a short period of time, that you would just lose people instantly.
Mm-hmm.
It just wouldn't work. And we saw that with the 1996 movie. They tried to cram a lot of material into a 90-minute movie. And so Russell learned that lesson, and when he brought the show back in 2005, he brought it back and let it drip out slightly. And this way, the new audience, it was their show, and 2, he let it drip out just slowly enough that you learned about it and you became curious about it. And I'm sure the same thing will happen during the Disney launch. The other thing that Disney's been pretty good with, here we are, well, it was a year out, now we're a little less than a year out. They're already teasing us on different Disney media platforms with some things about the show. So there's a beautiful, it's maybe 2 minutes, a little bit longer than that, an interview with Ncuti Gatwa, who is one of the new doctors, and that's a whole complicated story in itself as to why we have two brand new doctors.
Yes.
Ncuti is one of the new actors playing the doctor, and he has a little sort of primer for people who don't know what Doctor Who is, where he answers just some basic questions. And this is significant for two reasons. One, it's telling us a little bit, it's telling people who don't know about Doctor Who just a little bit, a little teaser about what makes the show magical. But two, watch him and you'll realize, as if you're already a Doctor Who fan, why he's perfect for being the Doctor. His passion about talking about it and his energy is perfect. It's magnetic. You can't wait to see him on screen, and I can't wait to see him as the Doctor.
No, I think he looks like he's going to be fun.
Yeah, I absolutely think he's got the right. I felt the same way when I first saw Matt Smith do a few things before he actually came on as playing the Doctor. I'm like, man, this guy's got great energy, and he's quirky and interesting. You just couldn't take your eyes off him, you know. So I have a similar feeling with Ncuti, and so I'm very hopeful. But to your question, I don't worry too much about it. Don't feel overwhelmed. I think if you don't do any do any background research before you watch it, I think you'll be fine. If you do, though, currently HBO Max, or whatever they're calling their streaming platform, I think it's still like HBO Max, they currently have the relaunch of the show from 2005 all the way up until last April. So they're only missing one episode to get you caught up. And you can jump in on any number of spots if you feel like doing, like, oh, I got a lot of time on my hands, I can binge watch a lot. Go back to the very beginning in 2005 of the episode Rose, and you can watch it from there. And if you want to jump in a little faster, a little pushing the needle in a little bit, you can start with Matt Smith's first episode, 11th Hour, which is another interesting jumping off point, because it almost is like a second pilot, and you don't have to begin prior to that.
That's the one that I introduced my daughter to Doctor Who with, was the 11th Hour. And when she was younger, and she always called it the Bad Fish.
Yeah, the 11th Hour, and Matt Smith in particular, is great for kids. But David Tennant, in the modern show, David Tennant brought us female fans, and Matt Smith brought the younger generation. He just spoke to kids. He was like the guy who made it cool to be weird. And when you're a kid, you're trying to figure out who you're going to be, you know, like you're developing your personality and you feel awkward. And Matt Smith was like an adult who was developing his personality and feeling awkward and being awkward. And it was like, oh, this guy's cool because he doesn't know what the heck is going on either. And he's got a great TARDIS team. He has one of his companions is Amy, who's played by the wonderful Karen Gillan. And if you're a Disney person, she's in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
And she's Manji. And so you're like, oh, that's the girl from, you'll know exactly who she is.
Yeah, so there's a lot of times one of my co-hosts has started watching from Rose, and he is now into season 3. I asked him yesterday which episode. He said, I think it's the 7th episode. It's 42. So he's on that one. I'm like, oh, okay, that he's doing good. Some other things have caught his attention at the moment. And he just started in January, so he's made quite a lot of progress if he's that far into it. I said, you have a really good one coming up. But I did an episode back in January where I talked about it and said, I always felt a good starting point is any regeneration. So anytime you bring in a new doctor, because they kind of, like you said, they almost do like a reset. They explain some things, what's going on, and it's like a good introductory point, usually.
Yeah, the only as much. I mean, I'm a big Peter Capaldi fan, but that's the one starting point I wouldn't recommend.
That's true.
He decides to do some different things in his first season, and I don't think that there's the I don't think that there is the pull. I think he did those things for people like me who already followed the show. But Matt Smith does things to bring new people to the show. I think the same thing could be said with David Tennant, who starts with the second season of the relaunch in 2006, and you'll be seeing his face on Disney Plus as he's part of the 60th anniversary. So for people who are curious about that, there's tons of good David Tennant stuff out there. Who one is an incredible actor, and secondly has some really great stories. My favorite season since the show returned in 2005 is his first season, is season 2. And it's just because I think there's still that raw energy of we don't know if this show is going to succeed. So they're still throwing everything against the wall as far as creativity goes. It's a little different. Once you've had success, you sort of have that confidence of knowing what you can deliver. But I think it's like a band's first album, right? It's raw. It's all the stuff, all the struggles are in there. Well, I think those first couple seasons of Doctor Who, 2005, 2006, same thing, man. It's still just raw, and they're like, gosh, we hope this show succeeds,
Are we going to be around for the next episode?
Exactly. And it does. And it does because it's so energetic, and it's so creative, and it's so fun.
Yeah. He does mellow out towards the end of his tenure. But I always enjoyed him with Catherine Tate. I like the energy that those two had. Yep.
I mean, we can pick any season and probably just gush about it, because everything. One of the best parts about Doctor Who is that you don't have to wait too long for something amazing to happen. If you start in almost any season, there's something in there that's just such a highlight, where you feel like, wow, I've seen something that I don't normally see on television, and that's part of the greatness of Doctor Who.
Yeah, part of the magic. And they're not limited to one area. This is a show that literally can take you anywhere at any time at any place.
And what makes Doctor Who and Disney sort of the right meshing is that the Doctor is inherently a pacifist, someone who's pushing away from violence, who's trying to think. And I keep saying he, but we really should be saying they now, being that we've had a female Doctor. We've had more than one now. The character is an alien who can change their appearance. What they really look like, we'll never really know. They sort of come across as humanoid for our benefit. And so they've been a man, a woman. They've been a person of color. They've been white. The choices are limited as the human race is, and that gives us a reset button. That's so exciting. We've mentioned James Bond before, but one of the things that James Bond, and this is for American fans, one of the things that makes James Bond interesting when they change the lead actor is you want to see how they explore the role.
Yeah.
We get it actually built into the show in Doctor Who. It's happened over and over and over again. And that change is deliberate. It's built into the show. And it's fun because the actor is allowed to do their own thing with it. With no disrespect to James Bond, but you always have to be Bond.
Right.
Your flexibility is a very narrow channel.
Yeah, there's a set of rules that you have to follow.
Correct. And in Doctor Who, I don't think there are any rules, are there? Gosh, I hope not.
you would think that you kind of used to be you kind of have to. There's a little bit here that you fit into, and they keep pushing that out. Other than you do have to be a little off kilter.
Yeah, and going back to the Disney thing, the monsters are Disney monsters. They're okay to be scary because I think one of the things that we underestimate a young audience is that they want to be scared. It's an emotion like laughter. You want to be scared in a safe way, and Doctor Who monsters can be a bit silly.
Yeah.
So, sometimes they're scary, like the Weeping Angels, and you're supposed to be scared. And sometimes they're silly. They're rubber monsters, and that's cool too, because sometimes you just want to laugh at a rubber monster.
What was the one from Eccleston? They were the big, like, blobby guys that kind of force themselves in. And they're always farting.
Yeah. Well, the Slovene, which is, I think, their family name, but I couldn't possibly pronounce their actual race. It's got lots of unusual letters in it. But yeah, they're definitely like the sort of, we have to laugh at these kind of monsters.
All right. See, what do I got next here for you? How do you feel, speaking of companions, how do you feel the role of the companion has changed over the years?
Ooh, that's a rich question that we could probably do an entire podcast on. So I'll gloss over it, and I'll actually I'll give your podcast an exclusive on this. We haven't touched on the book yet, but the sequel to a book that I just contributed to will be on the companions of Doctor Who.
Ooh.
So and that'll be coming out in early 2024. So we're going to be exploring this exact topic in writing coming up. And it really is a fantastic question, because the companion is the audience. The companion, when it works best, is our avatar in the story. And the person who asks this alien, what's going on? Tell me why we're here, or why this creature is doing this, or why we're going to make certain choices. And when the companion is at its best, they're us. And it's part of the brilliance of Rose, who is the first companion when the show returns in 2005. The first episode is really her story and how she meets this strange guy. And he's a guy at that time, and he's this strange guy who shows up, and she can't make heads or tails of what's going on in her life when she's basically a teenager working in a shop and, kind of just doing mundane things. And then this stranger with a time machine shows up. And so that's the perfect example of what the companion is, right? She's us. She's a regular person tuning in on a Saturday night to Doctor Who, and we want to know, who is this person and why is he dragging us through time and space? And let's ask those questions. Now, what's brilliant about the show is that you don't always have to have that formula. And one of my favorite times in the show's history is when they had a male companion in Jamie McCrimmon for the second Doctor in the late 60s. And it was a buddy movie. And it was the second Doctor, a male, with his male companion. Now, they did have female companion joining them, but the essential core for a couple years was these two pals traveling through time and being sort of knuckleheads, a la the Road to movie series from the back in the 40s or 50s, and Abbott and Costello, all the classic comedy duos that you could think of that made sort of those short sort of fast comedies, that when they were 75 or 90 minutes long, and they would hit the road together and wacky hijinks would happen. And I thought that they they found something there, and one of the things that I'm always craving is to see that return at some point, sort of a duo like that. And then you could have, and occasionally you had an alien or a robot or somebody to throw us a curveball. The Doctor had a robot dog, again, perfect for Disney, sort of era of R2-D2 and things.
K9 was fantastic.
Yeah, K9. I mean, he's a robot dog, and he's perfect in every way because he's loyal and he can shoot lasers out of his nose and
compute things and tell you all different stuff. And I love Tom Baker's line, "Oh, they're all the rage. It's a robotic dog. They're all the rage in Trenton, New Jersey."
And they certainly were.
Yeah.
And still are in Trenton, New Jersey. From a shout out to the Pridonians of Princeton and the Jersey Jaguaroth and all those fan clubs from back in the day.
Yeah, that was my first and sadly really only Doctor Who convention was it Delaware or somewhere? My dad would be able to tell me better. That there was a convention that I went to, and Patrick Troughton was there.
Oh,
and little did I know Lewis was there as well. Lewis Trapani was there at the time. And there was a dress-up competition which I entered in my Wii state. And so I got to meet Patrick Troughton. I gave him a candy cane on stage.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So.
you and I, then we are in elite company, and that we are Doctor Who fans that have met Patrick Troughton. That's sort of my I don't know what you would call it, like my badge of honor. Even amongst a few of my British friends who, they were like, "Oh, I met John Pertwee." I'm like, "John Pertwee? I met Patrick Troughton," and that's like the showstopper,
Yeah. So he's gone on to become as I've grown up and watched more and taken in the show more, that he's become one of my favorite Doctors to watch.
Mm-hmm. And those stories, as unpolished as they would be compared to what we've seen from 2005 on, they have a charm to them. Again, going to the Disney stuff, when they eventually come to Disney Plus, they have a charm to them that will completely work for people.
Yes.
This way, as we just mentioned, you wouldn't dismiss a Disney comedy from the 60s simply because it was shot in the 60s. You just wouldn't do it. Disney fans get it. It's okay to be old.
Yeah, the original Mickey Mouse shorts from 1928, 1929, as raw and everything is there, they're still fun to enjoy. Snow White from 1939 is, the earliest stages of an animated movie almost possible, and it still holds up. The story is still enjoyable. People still relate to it. And
if a movie is funny, it doesn't matter when it's funny.
No.
Like I'm an Abbott and Costello fan, and I just recently was listening to the Who's on First routine, which is their most famous routine, and it's still funny to me because it's just a basic misunderstanding. It's not out of time because it's so basic. It's basic comedy. It's two guys who are just misunderstanding each other.
Yep.
And that's funny.
It's the funny, and good stories will hold up throughout.
That's right.
Let's see. I had a couple other questions that actually some people gave to me when I said, "Oh, I'm having Ken Deep on, and he's going to talk about Doctor Who." Some people who, person that I know who has been to the conventions, had some questions for you as well. With 14, having some fun speculating on 14, as it were, or I guess Tenet coming back. Do you think that fans should be prepared to have a different personality, especially considering what an immense talent Tenet has as an actor?
Yeah, so far what we've seen indicates that this is not a rehash of what he's done already. So for those who are tuning in from our, who follow you for the Disney stuff, the lead actor heading into these the launch on Disney Plus is David Tennant, who's returning to the part. He played the Doctor about 15 years ago, and was very successful. And they've managed to get him to return for a few episodes to launch on Disney Plus. That's the practical side, that he's launching it on Disney Plus. Now, the story part is that the Doctor, this alien, can change his appearance, and there's nothing to say that he couldn't reemerge with one of his older faces. And so, but the question becomes, why? And is it just the physical aspect, but the character is different? And I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see a slightly different. If he was just going to do a greatest hits album, why do it?
Right.
So I think he's coming back to throw a little curveball our way, have a little bit of fun. And yeah, so I think that's very possible.
Because even I would say for the 50th, he was still a little different than his portrayal in the during his run.
And there's a long tradition of that. If you watch any of the multi-Doctor stories from the past when they had an anniversary, you know, the actor quite often has moved on to other things, so they're doing what they remember they portrayed the character as. And so Patrick Troughton plays the second Doctor differently on the 10th anniversary and plays it differently again on the 20th anniversary. Yeah, he's sort of doing what he remembers of the part.
Yeah, with the big furry coat, and I read in the Times, tomorrow's Times. Yeah, there was a slightly different maturity to him during the 5 Doctors, and even when he showed up in the 2 Doctors with Colin Baker.
Also, slightly different portrayal.
Yeah. All right. This might be a slightly more controversial question regarding some of the newer stuff. But how do you think RTD, Russell T Davies, for those who aren't familiar with the initials, can help the show, quote unquote, recover from Chernobyl from the more recent years, when the canon was kind of not necessarily followed along as much in regard to like original stories and kind of bringing unity back?
Well, he's a very unifying force. Russell himself is well revered because he brought the show back in 2005, and he used his cachet as being a well-known, well-regarded television writer and producer. When they lured him to the BBC in the early 21st century, his stipulation was, I'll come to work for the BBC, but I'm going to do Doctor Who. And they said, you could do whatever you want as long as you come here. And so he put his weight behind getting the show to return. So amongst Doctor Who fans, right off the bat, he's always going to hold a special place in our heart. Now, once you become showrunner of Doctor Who, that's when the egg timer starts running till fans start hating you, because they'll find something they don't like in you. And towards the end, people were like, oh, it's time to refresh the show. But they still hold him in very high regard, and rightfully so. And then we had Stephen Moffat, who ran the show. Again, loved him when he came in. I'm sure fans couldn't wait to get rid of him. Chris Chibnall, loved him when he came in. Couldn't wait to get rid of him. Now Russell's back. Loved him that he's back. I'm sure the timer is already running. It's just what people do. It's just what fans do. They always want what's on the other side of the hill.
Yep.
So, but everyone across the board, I think, is pretty excited that he is back, that he has a vision for what he wants to do. I've always, since my days on Doctor Who Podshock, I used to say, in Russell we trust. And that's 100% true now as it was then. He's an extremely talented man, very gifted, and we are lucky to have him. It's his cachet again that is bringing us to Disney. And I know there are fans out there that are nervous about it going to Disney. I am not one of them. I think that this is going to open up a brand new audience, an audience that the show needs. It needs young blood. Again, it always does. It's what's going to keep it going. the days of the show being in black and white and rubber monsters and all that kind of stuff are behind us. So people who pine for, well, it's not like it used to be. No, it's not going to be like it used to be. It's shot in HD.
Nothing is. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's let them do what they do best, tell great stories. As long as you have great stories, I'm on for the ride. And Russell is a great storyteller. This stuff that, some of the things that Chris Chibnall put in, it's a sci-fi show that's been going for 60 years. If you don't throw some ideas against the wall, it won't last. And he threw his ideas against the wall. And Russell will either use them or not use them. And what happens with Doctor Who, when we don't like something, we ignore it ever happened and move on. Because all you have to say is half human, and people will go, well, we never visited that again.
Yeah, I was just going to say the human eyes.
Yeah.
Like you said, some things stick.
We don't like something, we move right by
it. RTD kind of, as you're speaking, reminds me of Filoni in Star Trek. In David Filoni we trust, and what he's done for Star Trek, for Star Wars, in bringing stuff forward and giving us more. Because people have to remember, if we didn't have these gentlemen, ladies, creating this show and giving us more content, we'd be back where we were in the mid-90s, where we had nothing.
Well, I tell you, one of the things that happened serendipitously was with the COVID pandemic, Disney was shifted from making Star Wars movies to Star Wars shows. And I think Star Wars works really well on television now that we have the technology to be able to make the effects work. 20 years ago, it may not have worked. It may have been cost prohibitive, but it isn't now. And when they were making Star Wars movies, there was so much pressure to get everything right and jam everything into a movie. Now on a show, you can just move from episode to episode and take your time telling the story and tell little stories that expand the universe or let us play in the universe. So yes, to your point, I entirely agree with that, and I think that's why Disney is saying, not only to Star Wars, but they're picking up things like Doctor Who. We have this great streaming platform. This is the future of content delivery. What else can we get that fits what we do? For example, and no disrespect to it, but like The Walking Dead doesn't fit Disney, right? It just doesn't fit it. So it has to go someplace else. But so they have to look for what's out there. And Doctor Who is one of those properties. One, it's got a built-in audience, cha-ching. Two, it fits the philosophy of Disney. It's a family show.
It's a family show
without being dumbed down.
No, and it's creative. Like you said, it's always exploring something new, and it lets the writers. It doesn't put them in as much of a box as, say, again, going back to The Walking Dead. You're in this location. Here's your bad guys, and here's kind of what's going on, and it spreads things out, and kind of lets you come up. You want to put it, have them going against a giant turtle with 3 heads. Okay, we can do that. We'll just have to, give the computer people enough time to, come up with a graphic for it. But yeah, it's and for the people that are afraid, it's going on to Disney and it's going to be restricted and this and that. Disney is not creating Doctor Who. The production company who creates Doctor Who is still making Doctor Who. It's just showing it's being aired on a different platform.
That's right. And for now, Disney is basically the providing the means outside of Britain for it to be delivered, which I hope means it's day and date, that we can stop with this whole, it's going to air after it airs in Britain. No, drop it at the exact same time it drops in the UK, and you'll cut out all the piracy and you'll cut out all the. It doesn't matter that it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because I'm going to be here watching it.
I'm ready for it. That works almost perfect for me. I get home at 3:30, so it's all set and ready for me at that point.
Yeah, and the thing with the BBC too is they're saying that they're moving into streaming and to a digital platform, so there's a distinct possibility that they will push this show onto their own streaming in the UK, and it's, again, the same thing. Just drop it there and stop with the whole, we have to air it terrestrially over the airwaves. You still can, but that's not the future. That's the past. They're holding on to the past, and I think they know that.
They're not always that stupid. So let's see here. Do I have? Those are the big questions.
Sure.
Now, we brought up Elihu, so I want to give you some time to talk about that, because I know your time is limited. So, Elihu, which is, anyone is welcome to attend. This year is August 18th through the 20th.
That's right. We moved it to August this year, and we used, for the first decade, we were in November, because to me, I like to be around the anniversary of Doctor Who, which is in November, and for a long time it worked very well for us. This year there's a chance that the BBC could do like an official 60th anniversary convention or something, and if that happened, they certainly wouldn't tell me about it, and if they plopped that on my weekend, it would bankrupt me. So I felt it was just a little bit safer to move it away from any chance that they would put an official event. And as well as I'm a teacher and I'm off for the summer, so that actually allows me to focus a little more time on it. And I keep joking with my friends and my wonderful all volunteer staff that I can actually enjoy it this year, because I don't have to be working at the time. I can actually spend time planning it and enjoying it and being there, being present.
Well, that's great. I work in education myself, so I get the scheduling, which sometimes, which for me makes sometimes even just the podcast alone, like, okay, I want to have a guest on, but like timing wise, it's like, I don't want to take away from their weekend, and it's the time I have available, and then also having 3 kids on top of it always makes it add that extra twist.
I'm in a master's program, and so it's work Monday through Friday, master's writing Saturday and Sunday. So this is actually a wonderful little respite from my homework. So,
well, I appreciate it. I could take it away and give your brain a little break and talk about something you really do enjoy.
Yeah, something fun. Yeah, the Long Island Doctor Who convention, which is all spelled out if you want to find it online, longislanddoctorwho.com. It's in August this year. Paul McGann, Katie Manning. We have Catherine Schell, who was also in Space 1999, as we mentioned earlier. I have Jan Chappell from Blake 7. It's my first time having a dedicated Blake 7 guest. And that's a whole other big can of worms we can open on another great British sci-fi cult series. And
there's a connection.
There is a little Doctor Who connection, definitely. And so we have a convention that's very up close and personal. It's very intimate. It's limited to 500 people, and that's where it caps out at the Holiday Inn here in Holtzville on Long Island. And it's a passion project. Some people play tennis for fun, or some people are in a chess club or something. My friends and I make a Doctor Who convention. We plan for it all year, and I guess it's like the people who run the Mardi Gras parades. They plan all year, and then Mardi Gras comes and they get out all the floats and they have their big weekend, and then they start planning for next year. Well, that's probably what we do. This is more like Nerdy Gras.
New York Comic Con, which is a slightly smaller venue and slightly smaller event than yours, and they have their weekend, and then it's okay. We finished up. Great. What are we doing next year?
Yeah, this is I'm very much a proponent. As much as I have enormous respect and love for Comic Cons, and I have nothing against them, but we are a fan run convention, which is big. There are a number of fan-run Doctor Who conventions around the world, and there's some great ones here in the United States, and they need your support because we do it out of love. When you go to a fan-run convention, your experience is very different than what you get at a for-profit convention like a Comic-Con. The experience is very different. It's a lot more personal. It's a lot more about the community and taking care of each other and having fun. It may not have the star power because we can't always afford the huge name guests, but the people that are there appreciate that you're there, and they're going to give you love, and you're going to give them love back, and it's a great weekend.
I know someone personally who's been to a few of them now, and they've done the New York Comic Cons, but they speak so highly about your event, and it's a lot more intimate and just relaxed. It's not as a high stress event. It is, which speaks to, I guess, why she keeps going back to yours. It's not exactly close, but she keeps going back.
Yeah, I'm always blown away by the distances some people travel to come to Long Island for that. It's very humbling. I have one friend from Australia who flies in when she can, and one friend from Nashville who comes every year, things like that. Like, there are other conventions, and they choose to come to this one, and that's I never forget that. It's really it's a really good feeling, to be honest, for people to think that highly of what you do, and I hope I never let them down.
Oh, I sure you won't. But if you were able to have one dream guest at your convention,
Tom Baker.
Okay. I didn't even have to expand on that.
Yeah, so I can stop answering questions about when are you going to get Tom Baker. I've met him a bunch of times, so it's not for me. It's for me to stop the people sending me emails going, who you should get? You should get Tom Baker. Shit, I wish I would have thought of that.
Was there anyone else besides Tom? You've had such a great list.
If money was no object,
No.
Because he's the Doctor, and on top of that, he is he entirely gets what it means to be a fan. He was a Doctor Who fan before he became the Doctor. Peter Capaldi, very similar in that he was a fan before he got the part, and those guys really get it. They get that people just really want to tell you thank you. Thanks for making a difference. Thanks for being for carrying the torch for those years. We as fans, we channel meaning into their performance. Those things have some personal meaning to each of us, and it's unique. It's unique to each person. What Doctor Who means to me means something a little bit different to you. And so when we meet actors or people involved in our favorite things in our fandoms, we're really saying thanks. And quite often it's just to be like, hey, listen, this has some meaning to me. What you've created has meaning in my life, and I think that people who create things appreciate that. They want to know that they've said something and that someone has responded.
Right, because the unfortunate thing with TV and movies or recorded mediums, you're not in touch directly with the fans or for your consumer, and right. You don't get an immediate or sometimes a feedback at all, and other than raw numbers. And raw numbers in black and white isn't the same as a personal thank you.
Why would people go to see a performance in a theater or a concert by a musician that they like in person when they can just put the album on or just watch the movie. There's a reason. There's a reason because there's an energy and there's a communal feeling to doing that in person. Like, why would I go see Hamlet in a theater? I could just go watch the movie. No, because the experience is different.
Yeah.
You know, and each performance can be unique. Each performance has a different meaning to the artist and to the audience.
Absolutely. And they get the feedback and then they react to the feedback.
And, you know, conventions are a little bit of the same too.
Yeah.
That you could have the same guest come every year, and every year they experience something different, or they offer something different, or something happens that only happens in that particular year, and it makes the experience unique.
Absolutely. Now, I was going to say, if you somehow do get David Tennant, you do have to have Peter Davison at the same time just to see just to see the reactions. And
no, the best part would be billing it Peter Davison and David Tennant.
Yes, you got Peter Davison holding his sign. He's not that great.
Not that important.
But speaking of things that are important, your new book that we've alluded to before, that you contributed to, A World of Demons, The Villains of Doctor Who. Please tell us about it.
It's A World of Demons. It's a series of essays about the villains of Doctor Who. A number of contributors. I want to say there's like 15 or 16 of us. We all contributed an essay about. We chose a villain from Doctor Who, or more than one, and really tried to offer some perspectives on them that you may not have explored. There's a few academics in the book. There's a Emmy award-winning television writer in the book, and unfortunately, there's me in the book. Like the guy trailing off at the back, and that guy is there. And because my longtime friend Jan Fennick got the Silurians and Sea Devils first, I had to go with my plan B, because those are my favorite monsters in Doctor Who. And I tease her about that all the time because she got there first, which is fine because she wrote a great essay. So I decided to have a little fun with my piece and treat the Doctor as if they are the bad guy in the story. And that's mostly for fun. And I always have to explain that it's done tongue in cheek so that people don't throw tomatoes at me when they meet me in person, because it's really just meant to be a bit silly and have a little bit of fun with it. But, you know, quite often the Doctor shows up and people die, or he does some sort of, you know, does some dubious things in the 60 years of Doctor Who. So I don't know. Is he really the hero, or is he actually the bad guy? I don't know. That's for you to read some of the 16 greatest pages in literary history, according to me, in this book. It's from Fayetteville Mafia Press. They're an indie book publisher that specializes in genre publications. They do things like they have some books out on like Twin Peaks and things like that. They're a really great company, and I was attracted to the project based on the quality of the other writers in the piece and what they were trying to put together. And I just knew that everyone would have something cool to say, and it's been really great. I mean, the reaction to the book has been great. They've already commissioned another one, and like I said, that's kind of news that broke here first on this podcast, and that the next one will be about the companions of Doctor Who. And there's a whole fresh set of writers on that. Also, you know, very highly competent people to give some fresh voices about the whole thing that we discussed, about what it means to be a companion. Why are they important? what's their significance, and if you're a fan of the show, maybe there's a new way to explore what they do. And that's actually how I started with my piece, was how do I, when you're a fan of something, whether you're a Disney fan or a Doctor Who fan or whatever you're a fan, and you watch the same thing over and over again, sometimes you have to find a new way to watch it. Sometimes you want to stop and say to yourself, I wonder if the character that I love is really the bad guy. Or what if the motivation for this is something that I haven't thought of? And so I use a few examples in the essay, and in my essay, one of the things I mention is, what if the cat in the movie Alien is actually an android?
Yeah.
And by that rationale, everywhere the cat shows up, someone dies. Like what if the cat was the one sent to go pick up this alien for the company, you know,
instead of Bishop?
Yeah, or Ash in the original movie.
Yeah. Ash. Sorry.
What if the cat is like, because the cat is actually Ash's cat. We assume it's Ripley's, but it's not. It's Ash's cat. Well, Ash is an android. Why couldn't the cat be? Why would an android have a cat? I guess that's a Blade Runner question. But
yeah.
So you can. I love going off topic, Matthew, and here we go. We went
You're not. You wouldn't be the first one. I do it all the time.
Yeah. So those kind of things to me are fun. There's like fan theories left and right about the Simpsons or this and that, and you're like, wow, that does make a little bit of sense. And now when I watch this again, I'm going to watch it and see if that theory holds up, you know? And so I enjoy those kind of things. And so my take was, what if the Doctor was the bad guy? And then, you know, we're going to explore companions. And so now you want to ask questions. What does this mean? What's the significance of it? Or does it mean something different? And those, to me, those are fun things to explore.
Oh, it's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant.
I did it as a sort of a bucket list thing. I always wanted to have something be published. But you ever meet somebody who tells you, someone who has a lot of tattoos, and they say they're addicting. Once you get one tattoo, you have to have more of them. You can't stop. And I'm like, really? After writing the first one, I'm addicted to it now. I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool. I wonder if I could do that again and actually say something that hasn't been said before. And that's sort of how I feel about it now.
So you got the writer bug now. And so, I mean, what was your reaction when they first asked you, would you be part of this?
Yeah, I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled about it. And I was very grateful to be a part of the project. And I still am. You know, we're still talking about it on podcasts and talking about it at panels at conventions. And it's a really cool feeling, a feeling that's similar with like the convention, you know, when I put a convention together and you see people having a good time. Well, it's the same if someone says, I read your piece in the book, and they want to have a conversation with you. You do these things as icebreakers. The convention is an icebreaker. Doing a convention is an icebreaker. It's a way of meeting other people.
Mm-hmm.
You write something, and you don't just put it out there. You hope for some feedback. You hope for someone to break the ice with you and say, I read your piece. And then you have a discussion with a complete stranger who now you've met them. And the tradition of ribbons at Doctor Who conventions. I mean, they're sci-fi convention traditions, but they're pretty nice tradition in the U.S. Doctor Who conventions. The tradition of exchanging a ribbon with like a clever saying on it or something. It's another icebreaker. Two Doctor Who fans who have never met exchange ribbons, and they talk for a minute. And suddenly you've had a conversation with a complete stranger who you both like Doctor Who, And maybe you make a new friend, and maybe you don't. It's really just a little moment, you know. And those things to me are what it's all about.
It's a little bit of good in the world.
Yeah, for a hot minute, right?
So where can people get the book?
So the book is available on all reputable and a few not so reputable booksellers in the U.S. and the United Kingdom. Barnes and Nobles has it. Amazon has it. Over in the UK, Forbidden Planet has it, as well as it's like, I think Waterstones is one of the UK sellers. I mean, it's available just about any place you can find books. The World of Demons, The Villains of Doctor Who, and yeah, it's something. It's been a pretty exciting time between that and the convention, definitely.
And then you have a little film coming out as well to the streaming services that you're
Yeah,
part of.
that is timing wise. I mean, it all seemed to happen at once, but yeah, it's currently available in the UK on BritBox. It's streaming, and now it's coming to the United States finally. Doctor Who Am I? I'm very proud to be a part of. I have a very small part in this documentary about Doctor Who, and it gets released in the United States on March 28th on Apple TV, iTunes, Amazon Prime, and then you can order physical copies on Blu-ray and DVD. And it's a wonderful movie by Matthew Jacobs, who wrote the 1996 Doctor Who movie, and his directing partner, Vanessa Yule. They did a documentary about his very controversial time as writer of Doctor Who and his coming to fandom and how he thought people hated him, and they don't. And they visited the Gallifrey Convention in LA, and they visited LI Who, where they did some filming, and so that's how I became a part of that. And I have a few spots in there. And there's a very emotional moment in the movie that I'm very proud to say that my program director and I were sort of the inspiration for. We had created a panel for Matthew when he was a guest at LI Who, and it was just a very touching moment where he saw his father on screen as an actor, and it's just it's really the emotional crux of this documentary, and it happened at LI Who, and that's something I'm pretty proud of. So
that is an impressive moment. So definitely something to be proud of.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat to have a little time capsule too, that if I ever stopped doing the convention, I could look on that film and see a little of one of the conventions I did. You know, it kind of lives there for us.
That's excellent. I know your time is limited, so let me just hit you with some quick flash questions.
Sure.
And let's see if we can rattle you a little bit.
Okay.
We'll start off with probably a simple but the big question: favorite Doctor?
All of them.
That's a very metaphorical way of saying it, because they are technically the same person.
Yeah, all of them, whichever one I'm watching at the time. And then I like Stephen Shapansky on Radio Free Skaro. He says your favorite Doctor should always be the current Doctor, because they're like the current Pope, like they're holding the torch. So I also like that as a philosophy. But it basically is a dodge of the question, because it really is true. Like, you love them all for different reasons. If I had to pin something down, though, like when I came, usually you say your Doctor is when you came to the show. And I came to the show when Peter Davison was the current Doctor. So that time means a lot to me. So that's as close as you'll get to me answering that.
Oh, I thought you were going to throw a curve and say Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, that would be great. Yeah, that would be just fun, because that would annoy people.
Yeah. Favorite villain?
Silurians and Sea Devils. That's easy. I really do. I love the whole concept that There were races of creatures that lived on the earth before humans did, and they were smart too. I think that's very humbling to human beings.
It's you're not the only ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Favorite companion?
Jeez, this is really tough. Again,
Apologies to if any of them happen to listen to this.
yeah, all right. When they're like, "What about me?"
Why'd you?
Um, that is really, really tough to pick someone because they all bring something magical to the show in a different way, and they're all perfect in their own way. So, but I mentioned earlier in the interview that I liked the buddy movie characteristic that the Second Doctor and Jamie had. So I might say Jamie, also because Fraser Hines is probably one of the nicest people I've ever met on the planet, and I'm honored to have him as a friend. So.
I had a feeling that might be the one that you were going to say, but yeah, and there's so many good options.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. There isn't a wrong answer.
Yeah, and no matter who you threw at me, I would find a good reason to think they were my favorite.
Like I enjoyed Matthew Waterhouse whenever I was growing up. Sophie Aldred, I always found a very empowering companion.
The template for the modern companion, absolutely.
So I mean, just like you said, they're all fantastic in their own way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I have one last one, and this is a big one. If you need a moment,
Okay.
but your favorite moment from Doctor Who.
Wow, yeah, because there's a few sort of moments that really speak to me. You know, whatever that for whatever reason they're powerful to me. Peter Capaldi saying, "Am I a good man?" I mean, it was so powerful to me. I named the chapter.
I was going to say that's in your book.
Yeah, no, that simple phrase says something to me. You know, says something because I think I as a human, I ask myself, am I a good man? You know, am I living up to the ideals of being the best I could be? To me, that's important. Going back to the first story, Hartnell saying, fear makes companions of us all. You know, that is life, right? We do the things we do sometimes, a lot of times, because we're scared. And we seek comfort in others to journey with. And I know I'm sounding really philosophical, but what else can you be when you feel this passionate about your show and it says something to you? Yeah, those are a couple of them, and I know after I'm done, I'll think of something else, or I'll say, "Damn, that was such a great line," you know, such a perfect line. Stephen Moffat was always great with things like that.
Yes.
About saying some things sometimes where you're just like, yeah, you know, that really, you know, that's powerful to me. That has some weight behind it. A lot of them in the Capaldi era. I mean,
say Matt Smith had one. What in 900 years? I never met someone who isn't important.
Yeah. You know, Capaldi saying, "Where I stand is where I fall," meaning, you know, you have to pick a place and stand up for the things that you believe in. And if you get knocked over, well, so be it. That's just what has to happen. You know? So, yeah, it's a tough. It's a great question because there's so many moments like that in different times in the show's history. There are also very gentle moments too. You know, very simple moments of friendship or love. You know, that are important. Matt Smith, in his regeneration scene, he says, and I'm going to paraphrase because it'll work better in describing it as a paraphrase. That we're always the people we used to be. You know what I mean? There's
yes.
The Kenny of me in my 20s is different than me in my 30s, and me in my 40s, and me now. And we're the same person, but we're also different people. And the Doctor regenerating is sort of the on-screen embodiment of that change as a person, and also that it's okay to change. I have a saying framed in my classroom that says it's okay to admit that you once were in a less enlightened place, or something along those lines, meaning that it's okay to admit that you only learn something now. If you're stuck with the same ideas your entire life, you probably haven't grown.
Yeah.
Wow, getting very philosophical. Must be getting ready to write a paper.
Your brain's already making that tradition. I have to start writing papers now.
Thinking deeply, no pun intended.
But see, and again, I find that's the great thing with Doctor Who. There's so many layers to this show that you can just go for the fun romp, but then there's these other moments that are lines or moments that will kind of stick with you. And for the longest time for me, like one of those was, and I've never gotten this straight, if Survival or Ghostlight was the last Sylvester McCoy.
Survival by when it aired, yeah.
So in the closing line of that, there's worlds out there that are, again, paraphrasing because it's a longer line. I never remembered properly. There's worlds out there of fire, and there's worlds of ice. There's people in need, and there's people of hope, or something like that. And somewhere this is happening, somewhere's that.
Yep.
Somewhere the tea's getting cold. Come on, ice, we have work to do. And I just thought that was such a poetic way to kind of almost sum up the entire show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think great art should always speak to you on different levels and at different times in your life. And so the things that I feel strongly about, and I'm sure the people listening do, those things that you carry with you. Doctor Who is one of them. That it says different things to me now than it did when I was a kid. They both are important, but its greatness is that it keeps saying something to me.
Yeah.
Classic Star Trek is like that with me as well. You can watch it again and find something new and deep and rich in it. 2001: A Space Odyssey, one of the greatest movies of all time. I've been watching it for over 40 years, and every time I watch it, I find something new. Well, that's incredible. That's really incredible.
And like you said, in great art, the stories, a well-written story will translate for years and years beyond its time.
Yeah, songs with great lyrics that meant one thing to you as a teenager, but mean something completely different to you as a father, as an adult, or someone battling an illness. Like, right? The song lyrics are exactly the same, but somehow the meaning changed. How do they do that? That's incredible. That's
right.
Great art.
Yeah, that indeed. And look, thank you. We could probably go on for several more hours, but like I said, I know you're busy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate us just sitting and riffing on stuff and allowing me to, jaw away for however long the podcast has gone on for.
Let's see. The timer's saying 1:27. So hopefully
yeah.
people are still listening.
Yeah. People have long since tuned out.
Yeah, well, if it's, usual listeners of mine, they'll be used to, an hour plus show. And I remember Podshock, sometimes you guys would go on, 2 hours or.
Oh my gosh, yes, marathon sessions. Matthew, also tell anyone can follow me on the various social medias at Ken Deep. I'm all over the place. Pretty easy to find on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, MySpace. Kidding. I wish we were still on MySpace. It was a better time back then.
Yes, it was.
It was less controversial, shall we say? A little less.
So yeah, we'll find you at Ken Deep. I've been following you on Facebook for a while, and you're definitely one of the good people out there.
I try to be. I try to be a good man, right?
I hope many of us do. I do ask myself the same question.
Yeah, it's living up to the ideals of the Doctor, and in that movie, Doctor Who Am I, when they first started filming it, they started by asking people in the audience, when did you recognize the Doctor in you, like doing something? And I guess they were hoping maybe, I became a doctor or a nurse, or I became a, I don't know, a teacher or some way that it influenced you. And it was just a starting point on that, but I never forgot the question, because as a lifelong fan, you hope to live up to those ideals. As you said, am I a good man? Well, hopefully I lived up to those things.
I definitely think you have. Thank you again, Ken.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you again to Ken Deep for joining us on this episode of WD Magiccast as we continue our discussion and education of Doctor Who and anticipation of the 60th anniversary coming up in November. Did you learn anything about Doctor Who? What do you think of it? Let us know on our Facebook group. Continue the discussion. Any questions you may have, post them there. Our Facebook is facebook.com/WDMagicCast. On Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, we are at WDMagicCast. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the little notification bell, because I'm always putting stuff up on there, the audio episodes, and then occasionally some other fun things as well. You can leave a voice message through the Anchor app or Anchor.fm website and be heard on the show. Record a message electronically and email it to us if you want to go to the website, or you could do it through email. Record your message on computer, your smartphone, your tablet, whatever you have. Email it to email@wdmagiccast.com. Also, any questions or suggestions you may have for the show, you could send to that address as well, or send it to us as a message on social media. Links to all these are in the show notes and on our website, which is wdmagiccast.com. I want to thank you, the listener, for your time. I know how little time we all have these days, and the fact that we get to spend some time, an hour or so each week together, means a lot to me and means a lot to us over here at WD Magiccast. We do this for you, and we appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. The only thing we could ever ask in return is please tell other people about the show, either by leaving us a rating, a review on Apple Podcasts or on Stitcher, where we do have all 5-star reviews at the moment. And keep them coming, because the more that we get, the more those sites will promote the show and get more people listening. If you don't want to do it that way, share out a link. Share a link to this episode or whatever episode you're listening to on social media, and let people know about the show. Check this one out. they're talking about Doctor Who, or this one, they're talking about The Mandalorian. And share a link to that episode and tag us so we can thank you personally. Because, you know, we know that we want to appreciate you directly. So, you know, share it out. Tell people about WD Magiccast, or even people you meet at the grocery store. I don't know, your best friends. Tell them about WD Magiccast, because the more people we have joining our family, the better. Walt believes in a big Disney family, so do I. Don't forget to subscribe to the show while you're at it. This way you always know when new episodes are posted. While you're at it, also consider becoming a premium subscriber. Really help the show out, help keep the lights on, as it were. You can do this over at anchor.fm/WDMagiccast/support, or find our Patreon page. You can also help us out by checking out our merchandise shop, where you get some cool WD Magiccast stuff: pillows, hoodies, t-shirts, sweaters, tank tops, onesies for babies, coffee mugs. We got tons of things, tons of wonderful, high-quality things on there. Link to there is on the show notes and also on the website as well. Constantly having sales over there. You know, help yourself. Every item bought really helps the show out. It goes a long way. Hey, whatever you're facing out there, whatever troubles, if you are wondering, are you a good person? The answer is yes. And we appreciate you. There are other people out there who appreciate you and recognize the value of you as well. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Be your own hero. Never give up. Never give in. If you need help, help will be there when you ask. Whenever you're ready. But never give in. You are special. You are wonderful. Let your light shine for the world to see. I'd like to end this week's show with a quote from Walt Disney himself. Television is opening up new avenues for me. You see, it's given me new freedom, a freedom of producing things I feel we can do well, rather than having to hew down the lines of some title that somebody thinks is a prestigious story, that the distribution people feel will sell, but maybe it's a bad story for us to fool with. Again, that's Walt Disney. Thank you again for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next time.